Running Sentences presents The Bumbling, Humbling Knights, Part 3, The Journey. The trip up the river has gotten weirder as they find themselves slowly approaching the Witch's Woods. This is a work of fiction. Any names, characters, businesses, events, and incidences within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to any other fictional stories, or real people, or real incidences, or real situations, is of pure coincidence, and completely accidental. Copyright 2021, Michael Honore. All rights reserved. Early the next morning, having slept next to the door to the cabin, and he was fully expecting to just get up and see that he had to take over for Henry, who would probably still be trying to push the boat with the oar, but he came to a stop and could only stare at the sight of the troll, who was running up and down the boat with the oar, pushing them upriver. The boat was being propelled rather quickly up the river as well, and this was a surprise, and it stunned Marcus, who looked over and about for Henry, who was sitting by the main mast, and was also watching the work being done. "Freedom, freedom, I'm all for freedom." Marcus edged his way towards Henry while keeping an eye on the happy troll and its chanting. "Henry, what's going on?" He would not stop howling and promised if I let him go that he would help us get up the river faster or quicker or... Anyway, this happened. "Freed of the cursed bridge, free to be free, a free troll is free." The two watched a bit more. Then, since there was nothing more to do, Marcus shrugged and headed for the bow to watch where they were going. They made great pace up the river, zooming upwards as they went, as the troll was far stronger than he appeared, and he was good at moving the boat up. The river was also growing smaller and shallower, meaning the oar did not have to go as far down, and that the troll could push his strength more behind it. This troll kept on going, but in the distance Marcus could see a dam blocking the way ahead of them. This, as far as he could see, would be as far as they would go in this little vessel. "Henry, if you could go check on Miss Cassia and see if she's all right. Mr. Troll, if you would be so kind as to direct our boat towards the shore." Henry had jumped up and was headed towards the cabin, when the troll had stopped pushing the boat and turned towards him. "Freedom lost?" No, you keep it when we land, and you can go your own way and not have to go back to the bridge or go back. You're free." The boat lurched over, heading towards the port side when the troll heard this, and the troll resumed his happiness. The bow bopped its way into the hard ground and then bounced backwards. This did not stop the troll, who got the boat grounded firmly into the dirt of the side of this river. Marcus had quickly jumped off the ship and went into the woods. He made a quick check of the area, looking for any signs of any other foul beasts or unexpected situations. There were no telltale signs of any such things or witches, which slightly disappointed him as he made his way back towards the boat. Upon arriving back at the river, Marcus looked at his rather sad-looking party of people. There was Henry, who was helping Cassia stand as she still wasn't fully back to normal. And then there was the troll, who stood off to the side looking ready to head off on their own, yet unsure if they should. "Alright, the river up ahead is dammed and we can't go any further, although we should be able to go further, but apparently the boat merchants failed to mention that. Anyway, I'm relying on you, Miss Cassia, to lead us to these witchy woods, if you would be so kind." She nodded tiredly, and the group began to set off. Marcus was in front, and they followed the river, heading towards where the dam had been placed. It was a wooden structure that spanned the 60 feet from side to side, and cut the water down to where it would only release through a gap near the center. Marcus was paying little attention to this, though, as the troll from before was now, in fact, following them. He wondered why, but didn't say anything, as he wanted to see how things were going to go before he started arguing or yelling at anybody. Cassia also seemed to have regained some of her usual luster and energy, as she was now mostly walking on her own, so it was best not to ruin momentum, and, well, they were headed up a hill, since the river was dammed here. The spot for this dam had been a waterfall, and a craggy rock below the dam proved that you did not want to take a wrong step upward. The ground had risen sharply to meet up with this area, and, well, Marcus did his best to make sure that no one stepped close to the edge as they hiked up to where the dam stood atop of the river waterfall. The summit of this little trek left them staring at the river and the small lake off to the side. Marcus looked around to see who might be controlling the dam, as these things were never left unattended. And then, sure enough, 2 trolls came bounding across the wood and mud structure towards them. Fun, great. Troll, do you happen to know these figures? Their troll came scurrying up beside Marcus to look. The damn trolls were almost upon them by that point. Nope, not of my family that I know of. We're just bridge trolls. Well, we can't escape them, and I don't have my powers back. Can we retreat, sir? No, Henry, I do not think your retreat seems likely. The 2 trolls, who were taller than this little bridge troll that they now, part of that group, sort of, were now upon them. Who dare cross our dam? These humans dare cross their leader? Then they must pay the toll. Or answer our questions. Don't tell them that there is a way out of paying our toll. We need the money to pay for our troll children to go to school, so shush. Sorry. Well then we will take the questions, please. And also, we aren't crossing the dam, we're just following the river. What is your name? Marcus Court of the Bumbling Knights. Oh, very nice. Well, you can walk to the other side of the dam. Next, please. Henry strolled up with his shoulders back, looking rather confident. I am Henry of the Bumbling Knights, and I demand to be let through. I have answered your question, now off I go. The troll, who'd been asking the questions, put its hand in the way of Henry proceeding. My question is, what is your job? I am a squire. Oh, so you lied that you're being a bumbling knight. The trolls both grabbed a hold of Henry, and with a heave tossed him into the lake, but not very far into it. He came sputtering up a second later, looking rather soaked, and trying to tread water towards them. We do not accept lies. On to the next person. Cassia stepped up with her hands behind her back. She had balled her fists up, calling on some energy to produce magic, just in case to have it ready. Where are you headed, little lady? The witches' woods, to see the witches. Oh, that's not good. But you are truthful as I can see, and thus you may cross. Next! The 2 damn trolls began conversing amongst one another as the bridge troll approached them, looking rather apprehensive. What's a troll doing away from its home? I don't know. Do we have to ask fellow trolls troll questions, or do we ask them regular questions? What is it, leader? Their question continued for a minute before the one asking the questions finally stepped forward. This troll glared carefully at this figure of a bridge troll. What is your job, troll? Well, I don't currently have one. Lies! Toss the troll! The 2 moved to grab him, but Marcus moved quickly to stand in front of them. Why? He couldn't say why he'd done it, just that he had acted. Well, he's telling the truth, dear trolls. He's left his work at the bridge, and is a lost soul, just traveling. The 2 damn trolls, who nearly grabbed a hold of this bridge troll, stopped and looked at one another. Then with a shrug turned and began heading back across the dam. Sans money, and with all of the weird questions gone. Well, at least we don't have to throw one of our own kind into a lake. Right, follower? Yes, it would be very hard to explain at the next troll meeting association leader. With that, the 2 trolls were gone. Marcus turned back towards Cassia, who was helping poor Henry out of the lake. He and his newfound troll friend hurried over to help. With the witch now in the lead, the group headed around this lake. This was to avoid any further trolls along the river, since once you reached the dam, they grew plentiful in this area, and they all had demands, but they never stayed by a lake to demand lake things. Plus, there should be a town on the other side of this lake, and the late hour it was already getting to was not going to make for nice travel. Too many creatures would be out and about, plus the witch's woods would be severely booby-trapped, and wandering into that at night, well, Marcus could only shake his head at the thought as they rounded around the wooded side of the lake. Now they could clearly see the sights of a small little town ahead that was brightly lit up for some reason. The little village was soon upon them as they arrived at the front entrance of this town or village. It was unguarded, and the group wandered in, looking about the place for a place that they could sleep for the night. The town itself was filled with life, lots of drunken life, with people celebrating something, or just celebrating maybe. And Marcus noted an nary look sidewards at the fact that the odd group had just walked into town. A good thing, but it still made him worry about what would come in the morning, when all of the drink had worn off and they realized that an odd group was among them. Cassia kept leading them deeper into this little town, however, and she was waving her hand about a few times to show that it wasn't all it appeared to be. With each hand wave, they found the image of the small town slipping away as dark and cold buildings appeared in front of them, and so they trudged deeper into this mysterious little place. On their trip across this mysterious place, Cassia came to a stop near an intersection in the road. She was staring at an alleyway with narrowed eyes. Marcus moved to look, but he could see nothing. "I'm guessing you see a witch's hidden home?" "No, a warlock, or more powerful. I'm not sure which, but we might need to seek them out to get through these witches' woods." Don't warlocks usually like to move on before mornings?" "No, I don't think so. I believe this one has been here for a while. Probably acts as a guide for those who wish to travel through the magic areas in this area." She waved her hand, and the hidden curtain that concealed this place shimmered but did not move. "Morning will make things easier for me to move that, and it will allow me to gain more energy. We need to find a place to rest so that we can be back here early when the magic loses its potency over this curtain." She turned, and they were once again headed deeper into this weird, hidden village. It took them a while longer to find a spot that Cassia was pleased with, and would allow them to stay. They entered an inn and piled about near the fire to warm up. The innkeep was all too happy to oblige them with some rooms. Once Marcus produced some coins, of course. And after a hearty meal, the whole lot of them headed up the stairs to find beds. With a yawn, which Marcus did his best to stifle in this early morning air, he looked about outside of this inn which they had stayed in last night, and while it was brighter than it was last night, there was still a dark dinginess to all of this place around here. He wondered if this was a side effect of the magic that hid this place away. His guess that it probably was. Then, because it was cold, he moved about while he waited for Cassia to make her appearance. The sun had not yet risen, and she wanted to visit the alleyway in the morning, yet she wasn't up yet. She was probably trying to sneak out, he figured, and he moved about a bit more to keep himself warm, until she finally appeared, stifling her own yawn, and stopped when she saw him. "You thought I'd let you go all alone to see some stranger?" "They might not be a stranger, but no, that's not what caught me off guard. I figured after all of the traveling yesterday, you'd still be out of it." "We don't have time to be out of it. Thank you very much. If what you said is true about the princess being held for ransom and, well, there's no end goal, is there? The threat is what happens to the princess." "The letter did not say." And she shrugged and then began walking quietly away from the inn. The two walked up the street, which was abandoned of any other people. Marcus, though, kept a careful eye out for anything, and had kept throwing glances at Cassia to see if she was doing the same. She wasn't, and seemed more intent on getting to their destination, his curiosity finally getting the better of him. Cassia? Yes, Marcus. So why are you helping out on this fetching mission that I'm on? You're a witch, and I doubt your fellow witches will look kindly on your helping of an intruder who is trying to take away a princess that they may have kidnapped. Why are you doing this? I have some things that need to be dealt with, and going back is the easiest way to do so. You happen to be going that way, I needed to go that way. Now, if you don't mind, we have more important matters right this second. He fell silent as she sped up her pace, walking quickly down this hard road path. The alleyway that they stopped at yesterday loomed into sight, but Marcus could only tell this because Cassia was shaking out her hand, as she seemed like she was warming up to get her magic to full strength. He stopped a few feet away from her and the alleyway where she stopped. Her hand began waving in a circular fashion, with quite a bit of pace and oomph behind it. He kept his distance because, well, who knew what magic would do and if it would backfire or, well, what might happen. The sight of the dirty but decent little alleyway dropped away, revealing a much dirtier one, with a brick building at the end of it. With this curtain gone, the two made their way carefully up to this building, trying their best not to get too dirty on this muddy little path that was hidden in this alleyway. Their shoes, however, suffered from the muck, and it for sure got onto their trousers. Cassia, who was ignoring all of this muck and dirt, promptly went up to the door and knocked on it, and then grabbed the door handle, but stopped before she entered. Since I'm not sure of this magical person, it's best to keep quiet until they've shown their true face. So, just follow, okay? Marcus nodded as she pushed the door open. A figure greeted them as they entered, doing its best to stand in the way of anyone coming in. The creature, an oversized elf, sat in front of what looked to be a desk, and made it hard to get a glimpse around them. "Oh, guests! Well, if you got through the magic wall, then you must know we were here in the first place. What is it you seek?" To the master of the building, please." "Why are you seeking him?" "We seek to go to the woods beyond, and the witch's town." The elf nodded and got up. It didn't look like this female elf moved that much as they headed for the door on the left. "Please wait a moment. I will be back shortly." With the elf gone, they got their first real look at the dingy reception area. It was dirty, with a layer of grit on the floor that hid if there was a floor, or if it all was just dirt. The rest of the room had nothing to really look at, aside from a chair, which the elf had been on, and the desk behind the chair, neither of which seemed terribly interesting as Marcus wandered about the place. He noted 3 doors in and out of the rooms, but little else really seemed worth contemplating. They waited for a couple of minutes before the door on the left opened again, and they were beckoned inside by a large hand of an elf that stayed on the other side of the door. A poof of magic and coughing greeted them as they came in, though they couldn't see what was coughing or what was in front of them. This was thanks to the heavy cloud of smoke that had just appeared, and even though there was a hand that they could kind of see, trying to wave it all away. "Are you the master of the building?" "Is that Cassia's voice I hear?" With a snap of the fingers, the smoke cleared away to reveal a bright young woman wearing silken gowns and holding up her hands, having just snapped her fingers. With the smoke gone, this woman jumped for joy and ran over to Cassia, wrapping her up in a hug before Marcus could blink, really. It is! Oh, good, you're back! Father will be pleased. Come here! Come! The woman had grabbed hold of Cassia's hand and begun to drag the witch to the far side of the room. Henrietta, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in school?" "Oh, that was far too boring a place. Plus Dad can teach me much more. Come, you and your friend must come." Henrietta had led them to the back of the building and then outside. There, where there should be more of a back alleyway, stood a bit of garden and then the woods beyond. Here they were led into a garden with many wild-looking vegetables and herbs, and stuff that Marcus could not identify for the life of him. They were led past all of this, towards a kiln that was being fired up and roaring with heat, as a shirtless man feeding it things to the fire kept it going. Upon the noise of footsteps, the man looked over. "What's with the company, daughter, and why is Cassia with you?"
"She showed up in the shop. I was excited to see her, and I know you would be too, Dad."
"True, this is good to see you, Cassia, but you never come to these parts any more without a reason. So what are you doing here?" Cassia nodded towards Marcus, who took a step forward, but did not speak. "Oh, Cassia told you not to speak, I take it. Well, I'm sure she will tell you it's fine now." Cassia once again nodded to Marcus, who took this to mean that he could speak now. "I'm headed to the Witch's Woods. I was hired to recover a princess who is being held for ransom, reportedly." "The witches kidnapped a princess? That doesn't sound like them, or at least something is weird about that. So, Cassia here is helping you? A good choice to have a witch with you, but why come here?" "You're a guide who can lead us into the woods and help us find our way. At least that I was able to detect in this town, and I don't want to try and go all by myself into the woods. I don't remember the way completely." The man cocked his head to the side and smiled. He seemed to be enjoying himself and the questions he got to throw at them. "Well, I don't do that much anymore, but I think I can help out a bit, though for secrecy's sake, and to stop any probing magic ears, I believe we should probably head back inside, since something is probably, and most definitely, going on with the witch's town." With a wave of his hand, the kiln began working itself as the man led them back towards the building. They were quickly back inside and headed through a magic laboratory that seemed to be operating all on its own. Beakers of herbs and spices moved about, combining in vats, while a sleepy figure was in the corner, not paying any attention. To Marcus, it looked like they were turning out potions of some sort, and the room was very warm, with occasional puffs of smoke coming across the small chimney to the vats, creating a very weird little room that was just going on its own. "Oh, please be cautious of breathing in this smoke. It's a bit hazardous from what we can tell." Marcus held his breath for the rest of the trip across the room. The man led them through a maze that seemed like an operations office. Several times they wandered through the laboratories, and all seemed to be making magic, or potions, or, well, something anyway. Each time Marcus made sure to hold his breath, as they finally wound up heading up a set of stairs, and Marcus closed in close to Cassia, coughing quietly to get her attention so that he could whisper to her. So, Cassia, who is this guy?" "Bart, or Bartholomew the Wanderer. He teaches young magic lovers, if they do or do not have the skills, to crack the magic code." Marcus nodded to this, as it all sounded very right and proper. He also didn't deny that he knew absolutely nothing about any of that, so it could all be a lie to him. To what purpose would she lie? He had no idea on that either, just that it was a potential outcome, and that he was keeping it in the back of his mind as they marched down a hallway and into another room. This one was crowded with books and other knickknacks that greeted them. It was not a space for more than one person, yet 4 people were crowded in towards it, and Marcus almost held back at the door, but Cassia seemed to have sensed this and pulled him in with her. They all came to a stop at the center of the room. With a wave of his hand, Bart rearranged all of the books so that they were now places one could sit on without actually having a chair to sit on. And then, without waiting or saying anything else, Bart sat down on one stack, while Marcus judged his not to be an entirely stable chair, and decided to stay standing instead. "An adventure into the witch's woods to retrieve a princess. All good and noble as a task. Why would the witches have this princess, if they do have this princess?" This man, Bart, looked over towards Cassia. "I believe they're doing it for recognition as witches, and so they aren't treated like second-class citizens by the Rock Kingdom, but I'm not buying it either." "And why aren't you buying it?" "There are better ways to get things done. Plus, kidnapping a princess? I mean, I know the lot of princes and princesses are just used for political fodder until they come into some sort of power, but still, why?" "And Mr. Marcus, what is your take on the matter? And why have you been hired to do this when the king's men should be doing it? I was hired as an agent, one might call me a mercenary, as a bumbling knight to go save her. Knights are supposed to go save people, or save princesses, or just people, I guess, if they have the money, and so that's what I intend to do. As for what's going on, someone is messing with everyone, and that means political forces are at play within the Rock Kingdom. That might be Castleworthy, or the Black Knights, or somebody else. I'm not from this part of the lands, so I don't really know the exact situation going on. Well, this is interesting. Do you have a clue to go on, or information to go on? Cassia waved her hand, and a piece of paper appeared in Bart's lap. He took it up and scanned it over to see what it had to say, and then put it back down and looked over at them. I think I cannot help you, but I can direct you to a person who can further help you get to town. You will need to meet with Princess Rama. Marcus noted the name in his head, but since he didn't know this person, and didn't really leave much of an impression other than he needed to go find her, and that it was another fetch quest of some sort. Cassia, on the other hand, darkened and looked worried. Yes, that princess that you don't get along with, Miss Cassia. Since this is all about money to be dropped off in the next few days, you need to hurry to meet her in the woods. Henrietta, I believe you shall need to be the guide for them. On it, Pop. Good, thank you. By the way, is it just you two headed into the woods, or... No, sir. We also have a young squire boy learning ropes, and somehow a troll has attached himself to us after being forced to leave his bridge by us. I won't judge you, but are you sure that will be enough to fight your way through this? It will have to do. I don't intend to attack anyone head-on. No, well, not right away, anyway, unless I know I can win a fight. With all that said and done, Bart dismissed the two, while holding his daughter back to have a chat with them. Cassia and Marcus had found themselves outside of this building that they just met Bart and Henrietta in, and were just waiting. They stood there, passing the time by not talking, and trying to make sure that the muck and dirt stayed away from invading their shoes. After a while, Henrietta finally emerged from the building and was a bustling ball of energy, which seemingly, this energy, ignored all that was going on around her, and she came up right to them. Meet me this afternoon at the beginning of town. You probably came in by the lake. We will be setting off at once at the afternoon. Do not be late. I leave promptly. I like to be prompt in my departures. She then bounced off down the alleyway, which left Marcus and Cassia only a short amount of time to hurry back to the inn to fetch their friends. Their arrival back at the inn was greeted by both the troll and Henry, who stood awkwardly out in front of this place, with all of their luggage around them. Marcus walked up to them with an eyebrow raised, and so the troll somehow looked a little guilty about something. We've been thrown out, have we? The innkeeper did not know a troll was staying at their establishment. They didn't like that and said we had to leave, and then the troll got angry. Troll? What did you do? I may have thrown the innkeeper, just a bit. Marcus shook his head and then turned to Cassia, who was ignoring the whole situation and went to pick up her own luggage. You waved your hand and got the troll into a nice place to sleep. That is very nice of you, Miss Cassia. I wasn't sure you were that type of person, or that you would be so nice. You also don't know anything about me. That is far too true. He lumbered over to grab his own gear as she turned and headed away towards the entrance of this little town. Her pace was brisk, and Marcus found himself hurrying to get everyone sorted with their own stuff and get ready to go. Are we going to the woods now, sir? Yes. We have a guide to help us meet someone in the woods who will help guide us further into the woods, I think. Hopefully, anyway. We need to go, though, as there isn't time to stand around, so please hurry. The four found themselves hurrying, and Also did some sprinting to arrive at the town gate in time for their meeting in the afternoon. It had taken them a little longer than I had thought it would because of the hidden sections of town, each having their hidden screen lifted discreetly so that no one would notice. Marcus wondered if everyone in fact knew in the town, but just kept up the old ways of keeping secrets because they were the old ways. But it didn't really matter. Or if this place really got that many visitors from other locations that required all of this secrecy. It didn't really matter though, since they were leaving, and he felt he probably would not be back for a while to this town, if ever. At the arching gate over the road into and out of this little town stood Henrietta, who they found there, leaning up against this arch of a gate, with a small rucksack over her shoulder, and keeping keen eyes out for them. When she spotted them, she waved and then came over and hugged Cassia. "Are we ready to go?" "Probably not, but since time isn't great..." There were nods all around, and so they turned and began trekking down the road. This road was a mere beaten path of a suggestion, with dust occasionally rising from passing carts and people. They had gone some ways down this road and into those woods that cut its way through the wooded area, and all of this without Marcus feeling like they were making any progress towards actually going into the woods itself. But he kept his mouth shut and tried his best to block out the silly conversation that was happening ahead of him. "So which is new boyfriends to keep them happy and to get things for them? Have you got one yet, Cassia? Or are you prudish as ever? Or do you lean towards liking women? I know quite a few ladies who are witches and wouldn't mind being ordered around." "Henrietta, I will not discuss my love life. Not now, and not with you." "Oh, it's a man who is a knight, isn't it? Got the hots for someone finally?" "No, I have not." The two had veered off of the small path into the woods, with Henrietta turning to give them a thumbs up. Marcus wondered if this was about the witch this woman was teasing, or if this was the path they were going to take to get where they needed to go. The question lingered in his mind, figuring that asking would only lead to awkwardness, and, well, that would not be very good for a conversation. The woods wrapped around them, growing dark in some spots, while light in others, where the sun could peek through the foliage. The group followed Henrietta. She made her way through all of this, and she seemed to have a sense for where to go and not to. Marcus figured there were some hidden magical secret or scent or signs on the trees that were guiding her, but he could not tell if they were actually there. Are we getting close to this princess, Henrietta?" "Which one?" "The one we have to visit before we save the other one, thank you very much." Henrietta pointed off in the distance, which seemed both close and far away at the same time. He could only really see trees and rocks, along with lots and lots of moss all about the place. It was all very eerie and missing the noise of insects and animals, so he once again shut up, so that they could just walk and he would not have to be stuck in a conversation that was probably not going to get him any answers. In a short while, a house appeared in front of them, without any hand-waving magic. It wasn't there a second ago, and now it was there. Marcus swore to himself that he'd only blinked, and could only shake his head as they found themselves hurrying up the pathway to the front door. They all came to a stop, with Henrietta giving a polite knock to it before turning to them. "As Cassia will probably tell you, Rum is a bit of a troubled person. Just do your best to get along with her, and she'll help us." The door was thrown open, and out stepped a woman in a torn dress, looking rather like she wanted to fight something. "Who knocked on my door?" "Well, that would happen to be the kind knight over there, hiding behind your old friend, Cassia." This woman stormed her way down the path to Marcus, who evenly met her gaze. "Well, you're a rather handsome one, so I shall take you." With that, she grabbed him by the arm and with some effort began to pull him towards the house.
The rest of you, go away.
He found himself being brought into this house via a living room area, or a sitting room. He couldn't tell as his arm was being rather forcibly pulled, and that was causing him some pain. He glanced backward to see that his group had not left him to his fate, but were rather charging after him and through this house. Rum was ignoring all of this as she dragged him straight back out of the house and into a back garden where there were many plants and herbs that had been planted before she finally let go of his arm. He held his arm, which had gone a little bit numb, as his friends spilled out into the back garden from the house.
Now, handsome men are always good at menial work. If you could clear out all of this, I need to replant everything since it's all out of season. Rum, you have to stop this instant. And why would I stop? Cassia? We're trying to save a princess. Oh, I'm a princess. Am I being saved from the evils of manual labor? Yes, I am. Please get to work. No. We're trying to get to the witch's town in the woods so that we can free a princess from the Rock Kingdom who's been kidnapped. To this, Rum made a face that crossed between a sneer and some disappointment before looking over at the gathering group and settled on looking at Cassia. Well, I haven't seen you in a while, Cassia. I guess we need to talk about me helping you get into the city. Yes, please and thank you, Princess Rum. This earned Henrietta a glare for speaking out of turn. And Henrietta is here as well. What fun. We need your help, Miss Rum, not only getting into the city, but trying to figure out why this might have happened. Is it intrigue? Intriguing. To my library! The group mostly about-faced, so that they could head back into this house. Now, 6 individuals found themselves heading through Princess Rum's house. This was a problem, as the place was small and designed solely around Miss Rum, who moved about as if nothing was a problem. Marcus and Henry kept bumping into one another, as did Cassia and Henrietta. Both had tried to go through the doorway to the hallway at the same time, only to block one another. It only occurred to Rum that something was wrong when she came to her library door and turned to see a very busy hallway filled with a troll, Henrietta, Cassia, Henry, and Marcus. Oh, well, the night Henrietta and Cassia can come in. The rest of you, stay here. With that, they went into the room, which was filled with books. Literally, the bookshelf seemed to reach to the sky, going up story after story after story. Let's see, the Rock Kingdom and Witches. That will probably be somewhere on the 4th level. Well, I'll have to go up there and be on the search for a book or books with the names with Rock and Witches somewhere on the title anyway. She then hurried over towards a spiral staircase and began clambering up it, not waiting around for them. Round and round they went upwards until the 4th floor was finally upon them. At the landing for this floor, there was a balcony that wrapped around this bookcases, hugging them, with the barest of railings to stop one from falling off should they step too far to the side. They each took a side of the room. Marcus began his search on his side, looking for any books with the word witches, a task which he mostly abandoned, as most of the books had witch written on them. He instead concentrated on rock, looking through the stacks, slowly trolling up and down the 7 shelves for that word. There was only one book that he found on rocks, and that was actually about rocks and not the kingdom. And so, after looking for several more minutes just to be on the safe side, he turned and wandered towards Cassia's section. But when he got up to her, she, too, shook her head no. I've got it. Across the library, Rum held up her book victoriously, and then she hurried down the staircase, forcing them all to follow her back down. Then, when they arrived all on this 1st floor again of the library, Rum had already settled into a chair, and was breezing through the book pages as the book floated in front of her. The book then snapped shut and fell to the ground, with Rum looking very displeased and annoyed. Did you find something?
and all the promise that the witches and the Rock Kingdom would one day be married and united. But all of the witches in that town should be female, should they not? The witch's promise is always to remain alone, and Marcus looked over at Cassia, who seemed confused by all of this, and Henrietta, who was now joining them getting off the stairs, took a few tentative steps forward. The Queen of the Witches hasn't been an active line of heritage. Has there been any news on that point? Rum looked between Henrietta and Cassia, who had just spoken. Rumors that someone has shown up with some connections, but nothing, of course, was proven, and all the stories died out, or maybe they did. I don't know, I wasn't paying full attention. It's old story. Of course, that is until you showed up and now the stories are back. If this person managed to convince the right people, anything might be possible.
But who is this witch or wizard or person? Well, I've heard the name Angelico was floating about when I heard the stories. A prince from a region of the mountains, but no one I know has ever met him or run across him in the witch's city. Going backwards a few steps, what was the reason for this marriage? Oh, right, sorry. Information helps, doesn't it? The agreement was from an old truce when the two sides decided to stop trying to kill one another. The treaty threw in a clause that should a prince from the witches and a princess from the Rock Kingdom ever appeared at the same time, they should be joined together in marriage. All this to prove that both sides were committed to the whole theory of not trying to kill one another. So once again, offspring are thrown into politics by being used as bargaining chips. I'm guessing the Rocks are trying to stop it, meaning equal treatment to the witches, but why? Yes, then why are they kidnapping a princess? To secure a treaty? But that only works if Rock goes along with recognizing the marriage, which they will not do. Yes, this is all a very risky take on things. Marcus nodded to Rum, who had picked up her book again. She had it opened and was quickly turning the pages once more. And if this prince was a pretender to the throne of witches, the witch queens or whatever you said they were, it would all be very, very bad. Marcus found himself looking back at Cassie as she looked very, very concerned about what was going down. End of part 3. Thank you for listening.